right, let's go ahead and get started, Jorge. Thank you for attending today, and welcome to this Tero Q&A session in anticipation of the Special General Council meetings this weekend. So I know we're here to hopefully get as prepared as possible for those sessions. Before we get started, I wanted to cover a couple of things. One is to provide a brief history of where the Tribal Employment Rights Act came from, and then just to give an overall general summary of the act itself. And then I'll turn it over to Secretary Treasurer Valier, who will share some high-level financial impacts that are anticipated. So regarding the history, on July 4th, 2022, a motion was made for the Business Committee to present a proposed Tribal Employment Rights Act to General Council the following year on July 4th, 2023. A draft was made available by June of 2023. During the July 4th, 2023 meeting, a motion was made to table the Tero until the ethics code could be finalized due to potential conflicts and take it up at a special general council meeting later. The motion to table Tero passed at that time, and that brings us to the current time. The draft document in the winter 2024 Quapaw Post contains the draft Quapaw Nation Tribal Employment Rights Act, the Tero implementation plan. That's much shorter, it's only a couple of pages, and it is anticipated that it'll take 24 to 36 months to actually implement. It also includes diagrams. There are 3 separate ones. The first one describes the complaint, investigation, and informal settlement process. The second one is the hearing and appeal process. And the last one is the enforcement process. So anybody who does not have their copy of the winter edition of the Quapaw Post, I think we've got additional copies available, okay? And for those online, it can be found on the tribal website. If you get to the materials that talk about the upcoming Special General Council meeting, all of those documents are contained there. So generally, the purpose of the Tero is to ensure fair employment and training opportunities throughout the Quapaw Nation. Tero applies Indian preference in hiring and contract awards and amount $5,000 or more, and it covers all entities conducting business within the nation's jurisdiction. That includes any business, government, Quapaw state or fed, governmental enterprise, and their employees. So what does the Tero do? The Tero ensures fair employment and training opportunities for tribal members by 1, granting preference in contracts and employment, 2, establishing expectations of employers regarding training, counseling, support, and hiring, 3, prohibiting discrimination in the workplace, and 4, explicitly requiring unions to comply with the rules, regulations, and orders of the commissions, 5, stipulating religious and disability accommodations in the workplace, and last, establishing a process to investigate alleged violations of the Tero and issue sanctions in response to proven violations. What authority does the Tero provide to the Commission? The Tero establishes the Employment Rights Commission, which has the authority and power to develop all regulations necessary to implement the Tero, to provide oversight of the Tribal Employment Rights Office, to hold hearings and review and issue rulings of the Tero, and to develop an operations budget of both the Commission and the Tero for approval by the Business Committee. Tero also establishes the employment rights fee necessary to raise revenue for the operation of the Tribal Employment Rights Office, which requires covered employers to pay a fee to the office. What authority does the Tero provide to the director? The Tero establishes the director of the Tero position. Now that's the office, T-E-R-O. This position has the authority to hire Tero office staff and fix their compensation and expend other funds appropriated by the Business Committee as approved by the Commission. The director has the authority to administer policies and powers described by the Tero Act, establish programs subject to the Commission's approval to provide training, counseling, and support consistent with the Tero Act. The director also initiates and investigates complaints, makes findings, represents the Tero office before the Commission, and the court if founded complaints are disputed. How will the Tero be implemented? After passage, the Business Committee will appoint 3 to 5 commissioners who will in turn receive training on the Tero Act. The Business Committee will also recruit and hire a director of the Tero office. Neither the commissioners nor the director may be members of the Business Committee. The director and the commission will develop a budget for approval by the Business Committee. Then the commission, with the assistance of the director over the Tero office, will draft and promulgate regulations relating to the rulemaking process, generally outlining the location for posting proposed rules, the manner of collecting and responding to public comment, etc. Then the commission, with the assistance of the director over the Tero office, will draft and promulgate regulations relating to employment. That includes minimum wage requirements, preference in hiring, reporting and inspection process, investigation process, etc. What's the process for complaints and investigations? Under the Tero Act, either the director or an employee applicant can file a complaint with the Tero, that's the office, within 18 days of an alleged violation. The director must investigate the complaint within 30 days. From there, the path of a complaint investigation is specific to the facts at hand. Those flow charts help explain those detailed step-by-step processes. So at this point, a couple of things. Secretary Treasurer Vallier is going to go over some of the anticipated financial impacts. Once we get to Q&A, and that'll be very shortly, and you won't have to listen to me anymore, we're going to go to folks that are here in the room in the Quapaw Nation Community Building, and then we'll go to folks on Zoom, okay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, this is a big act. This is a really large undertaking, and it's a very highly financial undertaking that we would have to take on if we choose to do this. That's why I think it's extremely important that we go ahead and we tell you what the cost of this is. And if the nation, it's up to you to decide on if the nation is going to receive any positive economic impact from this. I'm going to go over a little bit of things. As Chair Supernall had stated, when there is someone who wants to do business with us, they have to pay a 2% fee on their contract. They have to pay a fee to be able to register with the Tero office. So it's a 2% fee based on whatever contract they have. Those are vendors who have contracts of more than $5,000 or more. So I'm just kind of giving you a little bit of a baseline here of what we're looking at when we're trying to estimate costs as well as an economic benefit and how much it's going to take for us to be able to receive any economic benefit out of it. When we're looking at estimating costs in the Tero Act, it says that we're going to have anywhere from 3 to 5 commissioners. I'm going to give you some numbers based on just 3 commissioners. So we'll have to have a staff of 3 commissioners, a director, and other staff members. We're looking at administrative staff members because the director's not going to be able to do all this kind of work. So there'll have to be other people that are on that staff. So basically, if you look at what their salaries for 3 commissioners, director, and staff, their salaries, fringe benefits, we're looking at just for that staff, $475,800. So you're looking at about $476,000 per year just to pay for staff. And we're looking at approximately $40,000 for training just for the staff per year, because everyone has to go and be trained. If you look at the Tero Act and some of the provisions in there, they have to be trained on how to administer this. Office, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, you're looking at about $20,000. Communications, we're looking at about $4,000 a year for communications. Background checks, approximately $25,000. we're required to do an awareness campaign. We're estimating maybe $10,000 on it, and that's a pretty low estimate to do this awareness campaign. We also have to provide training to vendors. That training for vendors, as they come in and they want to be registered with us, we've got to provide training to them to make sure that they're following all the rules. We're looking at approximately $50,000 just for training vendors. You add all that up, we're looking at an additional, so a total amount of cost. This is going to be cost just for the startup here. I'm going to kind of go back on that a little bit. A startup, we're looking at about a 2-year time frame for startup. So per year startup time would be about $630,000 for the first 2 years for startup costs. Ongoing costs would be about $610,000 a year. Now that's for 3 commissioners, director, and staff. Okay? And making sure everybody has the training. That's just to run a smaller office. So whenever you're looking at that, you got to stop and think, we're getting 2% per contract. So then we stop and think, how many contracts, how much in contracts do we need to be able to have in order to just break even and pay for this office? Eric Bone and I went over this. We calculated that there would need to be $30,490,000 in contracts to be able to cover the costs, the minimum costs of a small Tero office. Okay? Well, do we have that? Over the last 5 years, we looked all the way back to 2020. In 2020, contract costs that we have equaled $2 million. 21, $2 million. 22, $2 million. 23, $3 million. 24, $11.6 million. And that the $11.6 million included ARPA funds that were spent on larger projects that we have not done in previous years, and that ARPA is gone. So that's an outlier year. So we have an average of $2 to $3 million a year in contracts to be able to afford the small office. We need to have almost $30.5 million in contracts. I just want you guys to know what the economic impact is for this office, and if it's going to be worth it for the nation to actually spend that kind of money. Because if we don't have those contracts coming in to pay for this office, all of that money will be coming out of general funds. Just food for thought. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and start rolling into some questions. I just want to make sure everybody knows that this particular document was drafted by a law firm that we no longer utilize. So that was kind of our baseline. And then as our general legal counsel changed, it has dramatically been updated over the course of the last couple of years. The authors of the current version, of course, that's a draft. They're also on Zoom. So if we need, more specific guidance, I just want to make sure everybody was aware of that. Anyone wants to start in the room?
So I know when we talk about $630,000, it seems like a lot of money. But if you break that down per tribal member, you're talking about $100 a year to help protect our employees, to help protect our people. So to me, that's not that high of a price. There's a few concerns that I have with the document. The first thing is really how long the investigation could take. It says that up to a year. I mean, you could literally starve if somebody feels like they were retaliated against or wrongfully treated, you could starve somebody out in that amount of time. I mean, that's a family, their ability to take care of their family. Also, you said it was 5,000, but in here it says it's $1,000. Any vendor that's
Section 9A, Indian preference contracts. Labor and materials in the amount of $5,000 or more. That's what triggered.
yeah, it says 1,000 in a.
That's what triggers a vendor having to register.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it says 5,000 in here, but in another section it says 1,000. We're just trying to find that again. Yeah, it's a 2% or after you've made it, or after they have a contract for $1,000 or more, it's 2%. Is what it said in another section. You found it? Yeah. So it says every covered employee or entity with a construction contract in the sum of $1,000 or more shall pay a fee of 2% of the total amount of the contract. So
Right, so that one in section 17 defines what the contractor will pay, at that 2%, if the contract value is 1,000 or more. But in the other section, it's really talking about a different matter, where it's talking about who's subject to the Tero. I see what you're saying. You're saying,
Yeah.
okay, are you subject to the Tero at $1,000 contract
Yes.
or at $5,000 contract? It's clear that it's 2% fee,
Yeah.
but what'll it be? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, just to remind everybody, there may be things in here that each one of us think are just fantastic. There may be other points, such as what you just raised, John, that we don't like. That's the point of the special general counsel before it goes to a balloted vote. We're not going to approve anything on Saturday or Sunday. It's really to finalize the language to ensure that it is consistent with what general counsel asked for us to do all the way back in 2022. So we can change things. If we want to sync those figures up between section 17 and 22, I think, Laura, you said, we can do that. Okay. We can absolutely do that.
This is Billy Schapp. I just wanted to point out that I don't think that any of the contractors will be the one actually paying that. They will know that fee is going to be there, and they're simply going to add it into their cost of doing business with us, the same way that happens with the Gaming Commission at Downstream. It's just included in there. So 100% of that plus some is going to be, of that 2%, is going to be added in there. That's the way general contractors work, or contractors work. And I can't imagine food vendors or anybody else being any different. They have their price, and we're going to pay it one way or the other.
Yeah, the point was being made for those on Zoom that really, it's going to balance out. That's expected, that any additional price to do business with Quapaw Nation will be inherently included in the contract fee, because they'll be aware of that going in, which makes sense from an economic standpoint.
Jamie McNally, in section 17, it says the construction contracts. Does that include, like, QSA is a subcontractor of our environmental department?
QSA is an entity of the Quapaw Nation.
But aren't they considered subcontractors to environmental to get paid? That's where QSA gets our money from, is
Good
through
question. I don't know if
environmental.
they're considered subcontractors, if they're really contractors accountable to ODOC and the EPA. That's a good question. We'll see if we can figure that out. Because one would suppose that QSA is already adhering to our preferential employment Quapaw First policy, than natives, than veterans. I mean, I know you know that like the back of your hand.
So you said this one was original, and then when it's been updated with a new law firm. Did they happen to look at any other nations when writing this? You know, kind of like the beg, borrow, steal method, to see if they've had any success or failures in the longevity and how they've been operating their offices?
Yeah, it's a great question. Is anybody from Drummond Woodsum on the line who might be able to respond to Laura's question regarding utilization of other tribal nations, Tero?
Are we off mute now?
No, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Yes, okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Anna Cole. This is my colleague, Sarah Freeman. Eric Giles from my office is also here. The approach that we took in revising the law was to try to synthesize and clarify the various different items that were in your original draft. At the time I was brought into the project, I'm not sure if there had done an analysis of successes and failures in other Tero offices. Specifically, that wasn't something that we did, as we were trying to synthesize and sort of bring some clarity into what we understood were sort of the original set of goals.
So as a follow-on question, Anna, to what extent were other tribal nations' Tero codes utilized in putting forward this particular draft?
From memory, we certainly did look at other nations' codes as we were doing sort of that synthesis and clarification. I don't have a full list of the ones that we used for reference, but it was part of the process.
Thank you.
Hi, Callie Bowden. I recently returned from a conference, and in the conference there was an organization called Council for Tribal Employment Rights. And apparently they're a well-known organization that specializes in these types of acts. It does require, like a $750 annual fee. They do have experts on staff who will look at your codes. They will, instead of reinventing the wheel, they have stuff that's, tried and true and proven. And as far as the financial side of it goes, they have also really fine-tuned that to where they can fund themselves by, whether it comes through the vendor or not, be able to get that income to come in. They have training. It's just, they have it figured out. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If this does go through, when it comes to fine-tuning it and making the rules, if this were to be looked at to make it work a little bit better.
Thank you. Glad to hear something of that nature exists. Callie, is it Council CIL? Okay, thank you. The answer to that was yes. Any other questions in the room before we go to the Q&A participants on Zoom?
I'm going to pick one. This is Billy Schapp again. So it sounds like this is kind of a holdover document. And I know that in dealing with attorneys on the Constitution Committee and at work, they're not particularly, and by her own admission, they're not really trying to tailor something that is in line with the goals that you may have in the future. They're taking things that we already have and trying to make sure that the wording can stand up in court. Not that it is functional or similar to what this organization does. So the Constitution Committee brought in Native Nations Institute to assist us in that process to figure out what our goals were. And do you think that how many things are in this act that are really truly new and not covered within the procurement policy or already in the employee handbook that may, that are things that are already there? I mean, the procurement policy covers a lot of this with the contracts and everything. It just doesn't have an office that's being funded in a way to investigate it after the fact, I guess. So, do you have any opinion on that, on how, if this, how much of this document is already covered in other documents we already have, I guess?
No, of course. I mean, I have opinions on everything, but I can only speak,
Yes.
as an individual tribal member, just like all of us. There are components of this that are already covered by the procurement policy, but like you said, there's absolutely no investigation, complaint, adjudication process, because it doesn't force third-party contractors to adhere to some of our own internal employment policies and procedures, and it's extending those to third-party contractors. I mean, in its simplest form. So I do think there are some extensions of already current internal policy to third parties. That's for sure. Because a lot of the process that's described is what to do. I mean, some of it is process oriented. How to file a complaint. Who does the complaint get filed with? How long do they have to take to respond? What are their investigative authorities? And then what happens through the due process? Because first it goes to the Tero office, and then if there's no resolution, it lands in tribal court. If it gets bad enough, hopefully that never happens, but it could. And it's provisioned for in this particular act. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just my opinion.
So, as the chairman of the New Enterprise Development Committee, the line in it that I find most problematic is that the commission has the authority to set quotas. And while I'm not, I understand the reasoning behind that, but I think it's going to be very difficult to find an outside business that is willing to submit to that, because it doesn't provide any rules on if when you come, you only have to have 2% or 3%. It just says that they're going to set them, and that they could come in and set up business and be successful and everybody's happy, and then all of a sudden the commission decides, no, you have to have 25% Quapaws. And then they have to comply. There's no arbitration or any process for them to be able to say, I can't comply with that.
I think the only thing that's included in the Tero Act is this public comment period. That's the only time that they would obtain, any kind of feedback. But they could still not take the advice of the current, maybe perhaps successful contractor, and still hold them to that very high standard. Now, I will say this. It doesn't say they shall set quotas. It says they may. And if we want to remove those words or that phrase or that sentence or that concept next weekend, we can do so, to basically pull back on some of the authorities, the broad authorities that are granted to the commission in this current act.
So you said contractors, but this act does not just apply to contractors. It
Correct.
applies to anyone. Actually, the wording of it says that anyone that does business on the reservation, which would technically include businesses that we don't have authority over right now, and I'm all for that language, by the way. We should assert that in our documents, even if we don't have it. But
Anybody within the our exterior reservation boundaries.
yeah, because if it ever came down to it, they're going to say, look, in their own documents, they say they don't even have jurisdiction over this. So, I'm for that 100%, that being included. But like I said, I'm not sure about the extent of their ability to tell a contractor or a business located on the reservation how many. It just says it just says Indians. It doesn't say Quapaws, but how many they have to hire, because I think that would be an economic killer for us. I guess I didn't see vendors in here, and maybe I just missed it. Does it list vendors in there, or is it just are we considering a company that contracts with us to give us toilet paper as a contractor and not as a vendor? Is that
That may be my misreading, because I just assumed it was anybody that we engaged with who had some sort of a four-corner contract,
yeah?
and that would be
I don't think contractor is listed in the definitions.
okay.
So
Okay, that
Yeah.
may be just my misinterpretation.
that's all I have.
I just want to elaborate on what Billy was saying with forcing the contractors to hire. What did you say? Indians didn't really classify Quapaws, and that's one of the things when I was at this seminar when this organization spoke was that they were urging tribes to have language to get your tribal members trained in various areas, whether it's painting or laying concrete or building. That was one of the requirements that they wanted you to have in your code to be able to secure a spot for your people to receive actual training. So that's like the nitty gritty of this code that I would just like to make sure that we at least address at some point.
Thank you, Callie.
It went into the level of, let's just talk about it, people who have a hard time getting a job because they've made mistakes. And when you make a mistake, you can't get a job because of your criminal record or whatever it may be. And in the long run, a lot of those people end up with, the elbow grease jobs and the skill work. And so this is just an opportunity for our people who can't go get the regular 9 to 5 because of their record to actually get the experience to not only help them move on and go get jobs elsewhere, but even here be able to build our own programs with that knowledge. So, there can be a very strong positive to having an act like this to help build our nation future, either for tribal members individually or for the nation as a whole.
Let's go to Zoom. Any questions from the Zoom participants? Please feel free.
Well, since they're not end up getting on Zoom, I'm going to speak on behalf of some questions that were brought to me that they were intending to ask, but they did not end up coming. So there were some people interested in this, and they were more interested in the tribal member and tribal employee advocacy aspect of Tero. And they've expressed some disappointment because this charter focuses more on what is typical for a Tero office in Oklahoma. So they're wanting to make sure that the tribal employees and tribal member employees of the Quapaw Nation and downstream would also be protected by these elements in the charter, such as the whistleblower protection and the workflows presented.
Does anybody on the BC have a real, I'll be honest with you, I get a little fuzzy on some of that because This is my own personal opinion. I have one vote, just like anybody else here when it comes time to the balloted vote. I get a little fuzzy on the extent to which the Terror Act applies to tribal employees, regardless of the entity. Because what I guess my concern is, are we standing up Tero as a shadow HR organization? If that's the case, I'm real concerned. But that's just my own personal opinion. I mean, we have protections for tribal employees as a part of our policies and procedures throughout all of the entities. If those are inadequate or somehow deficient, to me, that's a different matter. That absolutely needs tending to.
That was really the point that I was getting to earlier, is that I feel like most of this is already covered. And if it's a policy and procedure issue within the tribe, then that's way easier to fix than a general council resolution and a balloted vote. Now, if we need some enforcement part for some of these other things, then okay. But it kind of feels like, instead of tipping our toe in the water and saying, okay, we're gonna start down this road with a Tero office, it feels like we're going all the way as full bore as you possibly can. And something that takes 24 to 36 months to implement also lends itself to that. So I think that there definitely is sentiment in the tribe that they would like to have a process, if I see something, to say something that isn't going to the grievance committee or isn't going to the ethics. They just want a place to go talk to someone. And it's an awful expensive way to do that with the way that this is currently configured, or the way it's currently written, in my opinion.
And to expand on, to address some of the inspiration, I'm going to censor as best I can. But I can recall from personal memory, when I worked at Downstream, there were several specific managers who were protected by management and HR for over 7 years, who were extreme sexual harassers. And anyone who tried to speak against them had actions taken away from them. So this Tero office inspiration is built up as a kind of retaliation to that. So you could say, yes, it's a shadow HR, but it comes down to the fact that HR has an advocacy responsibility for the tribal organization, but not necessarily to the employers. It's similar to why when you go to court, there's a prosecutor and a defender. As it is, only one person has protections in our office. Yeah. Basically, HR can't advocate for both in a single setting.
Just kind of expand on what Michael was saying. I think when Tero was originally introduced to us at General Counsel, it was to protect employees, that to get us away from being at will, because there's been issues with the appeal process, whether it be through here or through Downstream or through any of our other entities. There seemed to be a lot of tribal members that kind of questioned that appeal process, and what they were looking for was an unbiased kind of third party to come in, do an investigation, and then whatever that investigation concludes, that's what it concludes. That way the tribe's kind of also protected, right? And a tribal member can't come and say, well, they fired me and they didn't have a good reason, because it's a third party coming in and saying, no, they did have a good reason.
This is Linda Valier. When I read through this Terror Act, there's very little in the verbiage that I'm seeing that really shows or even speaks clearly about internal employees, tribal nation internal employees. It speaks mostly and more clearly to tribal external employees. So external entities and employees that are employed with vendors and contractors and other people like that. But there's not a whole lot in any of this verbiage that is clearly stated that there is anything for internal employees. I personally, and even as a tribal member, I feel like this is, I understand what everybody's saying with the employees and issues with the employees and issues with employee issues downstream or within the tribal nation or things that have happened in the past. I understand that. But this is, it's like we're going from one extreme to another. Things don't work in the extremes. They never have. Let's not have something that's a knee-jerk reaction to something that has happened and go extreme on one end and waste for the first 2 years trying approximately 1.2 million for the first 2 years just trying to get this set up, just try to get it set up, and then how much it's going to cost us from year to year to year to keep it going, and is it going to be successful in what we set it up to do, or is it going to cost us economically even more? That's my issue with it. And as the Secretary Treasurer of the nation, part of my job is to oversee and make sure that decisions that are made, that we make as a business committee, are benefiting all tribal members as a whole, including the whole, when I'm looking at the big picture. Let's look at the big picture and how it's going to affect everything and everyone on an economic basis. Personally, I don't see how this will benefit us economically. You said that it was only going to cost $100 per tribal member. Regardless, approximately $100 a year per tribal member. That's still quite a bit. It's $100 a year per tribal member that the tribe is outlaying for something that I don't feel like it is beneficial for the tribe at this point. I don't think we're big enough that this is going to be economically viable for us, where that $100 could be used in other programs. That $100 a year per tribal member could be used for other programs that would benefit them more. I know that doesn't seem like a whole lot whenever you break it down like that, but it really, whenever you look at it, the big picture of all of it, is it really going to benefit everybody?
I just have a comment real quick. Section 3, under the definitions, the point F, the very last line says, this term shall include entities of the Quapaw Nation.
Are you going back to the QSA question?
No, I mean for everything in general. It's saying for the entity, this term shall include entities of the Quapaw Nation. And then D, employer shall mean the Quapaw Nation and its subsidiary entities under the definition portion.
This is Eric Giles.
Go ahead, Eric. Eric's from Drummond Woodsum.
Yeah, so just a couple clarifications. It does, the Tero would cover tribal employees, and under section 34, subpart B, Indian employees would not be considered at will under the Tero ordinance. So there has to be cause if an employer fires or lays off or takes action against an employee. Yeah, but that would be applicable to tribal employees and Indian employees who are working for contractors or any of these other covered entities. And the covered entities extends to any entity within the extended boundaries of the reservation engaged in any contract activities within the nation. So it is as broad as possible. That's just a clarification.
Thank you for that, Eric, because it seems like we had a few kind of questions on that particular topic, so that is very helpful. And my presumption is that assuming, that language survives in what is put before tribal members, if that's approved by General Council is the supreme body over the Quapaw Nation, would supersede any internal policy that we had. Therefore, any, policies and procedures that refer to at will, that language would obviously have to be changed in the internal policies and procedures for any individual that the Tero Act would apply to. I mean, that's quite clear. So.
And then
you would still have to exhaust those internal policies and procedures that are in place, like in the HR realm. But that's correct.
Right, because we can't have an internal policy and procedure that conflicts with our governing documents, because Tero would become one of those because it will be enacted by General Council.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to also point out that the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also funds Tero offices. So it wouldn't be $630,000. I don't know what the number. I don't know how much funding they do, but they fund Tero offices.
Are those allocations or are those competitive?
Yeah, it's allocated yearly.
Okay.
And it's the first thing that popped up. I think it was in. This is what I saw it in the first time, and then I just double checked, and it's the first thing that pops up. This is CTER, so this is the. You can go ahead and pass that to him, right? They help you go through your Tero policies and ensure, or Tero policies, and ensure that tell you what's good about them, what's bad about them, what's worked with other nations, what hasn't worked with other nations.
Thank you, John.
Hey, this is Austin Headley. So here at the beginning of this act, the purpose says it's is to ensure fair employment and training opportunities throughout the Quapaw Nation. And I feel like when we voted on this at General Council, we voted on this to be, as what John said earlier, advocacy for tribal member employees or Indian employees. I do feel like this does overstep that a bit, though, particularly sections 24 and 25, where they say that if any business on the nation doesn't abide by our fines, our rules, what have you, we can seize their property, and we allow our tribal members to not be civilly liable for enforcing such actions. So I got a couple of questions. Have other Tero offices had to go to those means of using their tribal marshals or other law enforcement to seize businesses on their business properties on their reservation? Have they been successful? Yeah, and
I think you're asking how did that work out for them?
Yeah, how'd that work out for them?
Exactly. Anna, do you have a view on that? Because I don't know if anybody here in the room knows.
Those provisions aren't unusual in tariffs, I would say, just sort of very broadly, not having done a full survey, but based on the ones that we've reviewed. I don't have any sort of specific knowledge about how confiscation proceedings have functioned, whether those have been successful or unsuccessful. That could simply mean we're not getting those calls or that it's unnecessary. You would hope that less aggressive means would be utilized first before you would get there.
I understand there's other means to do that before getting to that point, but I do feel like from an economic standpoint, as a member of the new Enterprise Development Committee, I feel like this will hinder our ability to attract new businesses here. If they see that in our laws that we have that authority, I feel like that might be detrimental to the economic area for our reservation going forward.
Thank you, Austin. Any other questions from Zoom, Mikhail? Not yet?
Just to comment on, related to what Austin just said, this is actually a flaw that I am noticing is quite often in our tribe and the way we run our general councils. Yes, the intent was lost with this whole Tero thing, but we use the word Tero. So when the people then go in and look at it, they're going to compare it to the existing definitions and go from there. When we present things, we, as a tribe, during general council, we should have a bit more responsibility in being more clear and maybe coming forward with some written documentation instead of just using word of mouth and expecting the rest of the tribe and the people empowered to, I guess, mind read your intent.
Very valid.
We just got a question from Roman from the chat. Has the general council where this motion was made been reviewed to understand the intent?
Yes, I know I went back and read the meeting minutes from 2022 here last month or so. Not the transcript, but I read the meeting minutes, because what's in the minutes is what matters, because that's the wording of the motion. That was the vote on the motion. That's what's reflected.
He asked if the video had been watched.
I have not. Not in probably a year. You got to remember, we can't act on the discussion phase. We can only act on the motion that was approved or rejected by General Counsel. So all we have to go off of is the wording. And I completely agree. Sometimes that doesn't really hit the mark, with what the true intent was. But we have to fulfill what General Counsel decided that we must do. And that this is what we're trying to fulfill. That's the reason we're here today, and that's why it's on the agenda for this weekend. We have to do it.
Hello, Business Committee. Hello, everybody. Thank you for doing this town hall. This is very helpful ahead of General Counsel. I agree with you completely, Chair Supermount, that the verbiage in the minutes is it is a lot of times what we need to be going by, and it is what it is, and it falls back to the Secretary Treasurer how that intent was grasped. And I think that that's one place that we fall short frequently, even to this day, that we don't grab the intent of the measure that's being put forward. As somebody who voted for this, I was disappointed in what I read, that it didn't completely grasp the discussion and the presentation of what was presented by Mr. Barker and those who stood up and spoke in its on its behalf, and the questions that were posed around this motion. And I like a lot of what I see in this, but I really feel like this falls well short of what the intention was in the presentation of and what people voted on. And ultimately, I think that um, that's what holds the most weight in a lot of sorry, I'm losing my voice. And that's what holds the most weight is what did general counsel mean whenever they passed this? And did general counsel understand, fully what was being passed? And if they didn't, whose responsibility is it to help general counsel understand what was being passed and what the measure was and what that interpretation is from those who are trying to implement the measure that general counsel put forward. We could read something on paper, but we could also be reasonable and ascertain from general counsel after multiple opportunities that is this what you meant, general counsel, whenever you asked for a Tero office. And I think that this document does fall short of that. That's all. Thank you.
Am I unmuted now? Okay, sorry. So as Chair Supernal explained at the beginning of the meeting, this document and its structures had been prepared by your prior law firm. And so we didn't start from the beginning. We were working to sort of clarify and synthesize the work that had already been done. And so I wouldn't say that we adopted the structure of another nation in here. Certainly when we were clarifying certain protections, etc., we look to other codes because there's good reason to use good language instead of reinventing the wheel. But we didn't look to other sort of comparable nations to assess what their structures were and whether it would be an appropriate fit for the Quapaw Nation. We utilized the draft that had been prepared by prior legal counsel to sort of build on and improve it from there.
Somebody in the room just had the best ringtone of all time. Other questions? So far, this has been a really good discussion. This is a whole room and Zoom meeting room through a group of people that have read all the way through it. Congratulations. Proud. Yeah. Anybody else in the room? Mr. Shapp? Wonderful.
So if the tribe wants a Tero office, but isn't particularly happy with how this one's structured, at that general council, is it within the rules to create some sort of, I hate to make another committee. I truly do. But we're going to make an ethics commission if we do this. So we're going to be creating one either way. Yeah. But a group of tribal members who go through a similar process that we have on the Constitution and have a deadline to bring something back. And we can use this group that Callie has talked about and talk to tribal members and find out what they want to be in there. And continue to move forward, but not move forward at the tune of $600,000 a year.
So I think your question, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, Billy. It would basically follow the ethics commission model, where
Yes.
I'm just going to use
Yep.
that, where the commission is established, they are voted on by general counsel, and they are given a very specific task to
Yes.
accomplish. And I don't want to put words in your mouth about what that
Nope,
task
that's exactly
should
what
be.
I'm saying.
That's for general
Keep on,
counsel.
keep on putting them in there. You're doing good.
So, so I think the way it would work is, based on Special General Counsel 4, we can make a motion to table it. Okay, I don't want to compound things, but it would require another motion by General Counsel to do what you just described, to establish the Tero Commission, give them specific instructions.
I was thinking just strike 95% of the document and only leave the parts that create the commission, and then add a section on how they are to come up with their rules. And
that's a part of
and
Special
have-
General Counsel 4.
and have 5 days to do it from right now. to come up with the language anyway. To come up with the language anyway to get it in there.
It'd be up to General Counsel.
Well, somebody's going to have to present language to be hashed over. That's the reason I'm asking this here, because we might have some people that could help us
Right.
craft that language. Nope. Sorry, John.
They could also look at
Motions or something
things like
to
how
do.
much funding the EEOC, gives out to. I think I read that it's like 36 million that's allocated to local governments and tribal nations, but how much does each tribe typically?
That's what
get
I was
for it?
asking before, if their total pool is a competitive grant between
Yeah.
all those, or if it is purely a tribal
No,
allocation.
it looks like
some.
looks like it's a grant, like it's.
Okay, yeah, it's
But it's they have like a $483 million annual budget, but then they allocate like 36 million to tribal nations and local governments. So it's probably who puts in for it.
But I think, Billy, what you just described as an alternative should be a natural byproduct of what we're going to cover in Special General Counsel 4, because we sure don't want things going to a balloted vote. We want it to be good. We want it to be what tribal members want to see, and we just sure don't want to waste everybody's time.
Yeah, and I think that there's enough concerns on all sides, from that it doesn't go far enough, that it goes too far, that it's pretty clear that that's a hard way to pass something whenever there's people on both sides of that issue, and that the document didn't hit the middle, I guess.
Which was part of your point.
Yeah. So, we should probably find a way to give them authority to talk to the Human Resources Department and look through those policies and procedures, and it's going to take a while. Anyway, that I don't know what the rules are, and I could probably ask Roman, and he could find it in Robert's Rules of Order really quick. I don't know how much of a document you can strike. I don't know if there is a limit. I don't know if you
Strike
can.
all but one section in the entire document.
Okay.
If that's what General Counsel decides, that's what we will do, and that's the purpose of
Okay.
that particular meeting. There's no threshold.
Yeah. Well, the problem with tabling it is that we have to take it up at the next one, unless
Right.
it's time
Well,
defined. We can time
If you,
define it.
technically, if you lay it on the table, it stays on the table unless there's another motion to bring it back. We have to table it to time certain or an event,
Yeah.
like how it was tabled in 2023. For a, it will be addressed in a special general council meeting for that
Okay,
purpose.
so that was the reasoning. It was time certain since they said
Or at least
after this.
event-based.
Okay.
It was event-based.
Okay.
It wasn't
that
within
makes
6
sense.
months or 2 days or
Yeah.
whatever. So,
Okay.
yeah. Now I just got dizzy.
Yeah.
And fell out of my chair.
What I basically heard is that Billy wants to establish another ethics committee. I think just amend the ethics committee guidelines to accomplish the same thing. And in regard to John on the EOC, back in 2010, there was a case filed with the EOC. The EOC said they had no jurisdiction on tribes.
So Lloyd, you were putting forward the idea of extending the ethics commission powers, their rights and responsibilities to
That's
include.
basically what Billy's talking about.
Okay. What do y'all think? Billy was talking before you had your hand raised.
So what I was saying is, so this act creates another board. That's what it does. So, and it requires them to be Quapaws, and it requires them to get some training. And I think all those are good. What we would empower that board to do, instead of promulgating rules under this act, is to write a new act that more closely resembles the overall sentiment of the tribe, because it sounds like, just from the opinions in this room, and we have to assume that the opinions in this room are probably not so different than the majority of the tribe, that this document, some people believe it goes too far, or they may have areas that they believe it goes too far and believe it falls short. And that if we're going to rewrite it, we should pick some people to do that. The general council should pick some people to do that, or maybe we come up with some interim language where the BC picks one and the general council picks two, or however we want to do it. But I hadn't thought about what you said, that of just expanding the powers of the Ethics Commission, and I don't know if I have an opinion on that right now, but yeah. I have to think about that. Is that something that you think is a good idea, I guess?
Now we skipped Joey. Joey had his hand up.
I think my reason, Billy, was the fact that you establish a commission, you have an ethics committee, you have HR. That's too many people.
Yeah, I totally agree.
But I think the ethics committee can amend their agenda and cover employees.
Well, general counsel would have to agree to that.
That seems like the most visible thing to do.
Let the record reflect Joey gave up his spot in line.
Ladies first. Okay. Uh, I can understand expanding and doing. My issues are the evolving of the committee, how it evolves because they're reappointed or revoted on every so many years. So now we're in a cycle of changing, and people leave committees midterm. Things happen. We're in an evolving cycle that I feel like we may not, if there was something with an employee, get to the bottom solution of it. Do I think a new committee could be helpful as a mediator or liaison, or a person who is trained in this to help in these situations between HR, the companies, the businesses? Yes. Because I am a firm believer that if we lose a tribal member for any reason, due to being termed or an advancement, it's a loss for the entire nation. I think that when that happens, it's something that we should all be sad about because we've lost value. But I'm also a big proponent of the things that Callie had mentioned in terms of that may not have been a good fit for them. Why don't we train them for something else? Their behaviors, actions, and what led to them being in a position that they were appealing or fighting a term, it may not have just been a good fit or a skill that they loved, wanted to be in, or do. And so I think there is definitely avenues and directions that we can take with this and help our employees, but also in terms of accountability, because we have processes, procedures, and rules for a reason. Otherwise, it'd be a free-for-all. But I think there's definitely an avenue of maybe even possibly separating this, because I do see the positives of the business side to it and vendors and people coming in. But I do know that people are concerned of how it would protect them. And my biggest fear just at the end of the day is if we lose a tribal employee, it's never a win. So whether that's establishing another committee, we got a lot of committees, or a person position, anything to help guide our HR departments in those directions of helping with that. A tribal member, almost like a liaison, executive, or mediator, help with this. I think it would be beneficial in the long run.
Thank you, Laura. I think Joey, oh, okay.
Something else to consider is the commission would then probably need an office under it to be able to execute employees. Right now, it's just elected officials and appointed officials. Yeah, because that'd be all.
Oh, you're talking about a physical space?
Well, that and staffing, because right now that little ethics commission would then have to take on a whole lot more responsibility than just their current. And we would also have to consider the potential.
Regardless of whether it was, extended authorities of the current ethics commission or a separate body, they still need a place to conduct their activities.
That, and right now they're responsible for what, 20, 30 people? And now we're going to scale them to have to hold thousands of people accountable with the same staff. Yep. And another thing to consider too is they're already kind of an oversight, but that would not only make them oversight, but also kind of politically complicated for them, because they would have to also be in an adversarial role directly with the people they have oversight over when it comes to those employees as well. Maybe.
I've been rolling this around for about 30 minutes. Something that John said was the employees, they wanted somebody other than here that they can go to as a last resort. So are we kind of looking at they wanting a tribal liaison, or are they wanting maybe a firm that has no affiliation with the tribe at all, but they can go to, and that's what they do, is they mediate issues? And I wanted to understand that.
Yeah, I think that is what they're looking for, or at least generally, somebody that can come in unbiased, but also somebody that's promoting and advocating for tribal members to be employed in our location. Somebody that's, like Laura said, if they're not a good fit there, let's not fire them. Let's figure out a way to move them in a spot where they have success, because anybody in that position should want every tribal member to succeed, and we should all want that. And then also to respond to what Lloyd said, the EEOC doesn't have jurisdiction over tribal nations aside from two very limited areas, which is discrimination. But I imagine that what they do is say, if your Tero office is in compliance with federal law, we will fund you. If you're not, you will not get any funds.
To build off of what Laura said about them not being a good fit, I think this document kind of sets people up for failure, because Section 13 under job qualifications, it says no employer shall use job qualification criteria that serve as barriers to Indian employment. So is that saying you're going to put somebody in there even if they're not qualified just because they're Quapaw? And that is setting them up to fail.
Good point. Virginia has a question. Statement.
I just think that in thinking of this, being part of the regulatory body of the nation, whatever decision we make seems to always be under attack. So this position or this committee, department, whatever, needs some kind of protection. Because if you get, say, Michelle is in this position and Callie has a beef or whatever, and she comes, I know, your sisters, it works, it happens. You should see Stacia and Kristen. Anyway, but just she comes in and, well, Michelle, blah, 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 and then here you've got this whole other issue that has happened.
The thing is, I just wanted to give a report. We reported at the business committee meeting.
So it needs some work. We can get into that work today if you would like, or we can.
Hold on, can we get that line muted for the meeting happening in the room?
So I think that if this is something that we're truly thinking about, all of those avenues need to be looked at. Because you can have somebody that's perfectly qualified, but because of political, family, whatever, then now this person no longer is employed because Jane Doe over here got her family to go against this person, and so now this person has no protection over their employment, even though they followed everything to the letter and did everything the policy says. It then becomes a political backlash. And we've all seen it happen. So
Hold on, nobody can hear. Because these are important topics. They deserve to be brought forward.
I was just going to piggyback off of what Virginia said, and she's got a valid point that maybe it should be written to the point where you state they've got to be X amount of age, they've got to be a tribal member, they can't be employed through the tribe, they can't have any family member as an employee through the nation, just for an example. Well, it does. Some people
now
are
the
single,
ethics code actually has a pretty tight definition of family, right? So it doesn't extend to the fourth cousin twice removed. It's very specific.
I'm not getting into specifics. I'm just backing what you're saying. Yes, there should be something there to avoid that, or a clause stating that they should, recuse themselves if blah, blah, blah happens. But
at least
I
it does
agree.
have a good definition of nepotism.
Yes.
A definition. I'm not saying it's perfect. Everything can be improved, but at least there is a solid definition in there.
I think it's important because we're all, one way or another. Like Linda and I are our new normal is going to the same birthday parties. And yeah, same grandkids. But I just think that that's something important to think about because it happens. And to no fault of, anybody really, but it does happen. So I think that's something that needs to at least be thought about.
So it sounds like we're kind of heading down a couple of different paths, and we'll have to see how things kind of transpire next weekend. But one path is really, I'm making false separations just to convey a point. Further consideration of this Tero code is drafted and making specific changes to it. Door number 2 is making major modifications, bringing it back to a skeleton, having general counsel vote on whether it's the ethics commissioners broadening their authorities or new individuals, given what y'all just said about affiliations, right, that could cause extreme conflicts, and trying to put something forward that's more in line with the spirit of what tribal members wanted to see 4th of July 2022.
I have to say that I am very encouraged by the discussion that I've heard here this evening. Whenever I spoke earlier, I said something about going from one extreme to the other. I think the discussion is actually bringing things to the middle. There are several different ways that we can solve our problems if we find a middle ground without going to an extreme. Like I said, I think this document goes to an extreme. There are other avenues of being able to resolve those issues and those employee issues, and other ways to be able to do it without going to an extreme. And I'm glad to hear all of the discussion that we've had here this evening, in that we are looking for that middle ground.
Joey, you never got to make your comment or ask question.
Well, I was back there attending that big bruise on the back of my head. Boy, I got smacked hard. God dang.
And I saw it.
Yeah.
We'll get an attorney.
Yeah. Mr. Giles. No. Yeah, just I know there's a 5-minute timeline at General Counsel, so I try not to go over there and speak too long because a lot of people kind of get real upset, like, shut up, put it down, move. People do that every time. And I'm like, God dang. Like, all right, yeah, I get it. Cool. And I sure appreciate all y'all coming out. You can see it really means something, the more of our folks we have to come together to review something, to come over something like this, the way that it is. Just kind of echoing your comment there. It makes me feel good that we have good conversation about it, that we're meeting in the middle somewhere. But I got to tell you guys the truth, my little truthful opinion, how I think, how I feel about it. And this isn't, I try not to hold on to anything because I'm just like a lot of you. I've been an employee here for a little while. I've seen a bunch of different administrations come in, and I'm sure that a lot of them meant only the best, to help with tribal member employees, only the best. But at some point in time, it kind of turned sour, it kind of turned weaponized, And I'm not the only one who thinks that, I talked to quite a few different tribal members, and there are a lot of people that think that as well. And I think that was the true intent behind this back in 22 when it was brought forward, But it also, it's kind of like Michael was saying earlier, there's an intent behind something, and then there's what you actually have in front of you. And I know this speaks to tribal member employees, but it also speaks to tribal sovereignty too. And right here, where I'm at, I have to do the best I can for both. And so, as far as this goes, I've read it a handful of times, and some of it's still kind of tough to go along with, but the overall picture of it, I can really see it. And not that it's completely unnecessary. I just think it's a bit much in one little book, that the duties and responsibilities of this entire act can be split. Kind of going along with you, Lloyd, right there. I think the Ethics Commission should have been dealing with tribal member employees this whole time, because there's a popular belief that higher level management, executives, boards, business committee shouldn't be getting into day-to-day operations. Okay, I can understand that. When you get it all the way up there, you got bigger things to worry about. You shouldn't be worrying about why that person didn't pick up that random sock laying on the ground, you know. It should work itself out, you know. I mean, that's an extreme example, but it should work itself out. Some things should work itself out. But in another stance, right, I was elected, and I took an oath to uphold the policies and procedures, and I've done the best I can to help with that, to try to improve that for a lot further than me while I can. But it's really for the future. It's really for everybody else, you know. That's how I think about it. That's how I was raised to think about it. But if I'm not advocating for tribal members, trying to help tribal members, whether I like them or not, I mean, I've helped out, I don't know how many people I don't like, over and over again. Some people, I can't stand them, you know, but I love them because they're my own people, and I try to help them out the best I can. But if I'm not doing that, I have no idea what else I'm doing up here. And that's really just how I feel. But sometimes it gets too close to home, so you got to back away. And that's not a good feeling. You got people, tribe members who are hurt, you know, not able to either put food on their tables or pay their lights, you know, or get their kids to school or something like that. And you know, there's something that you can do. There's somebody you can talk to help with that. But then it's too close to you, so you step away trying to adhere to policy and procedure that General Counsel told you to follow. Okay, yeah, I get that. I understand that. Why? Because we've had administrations weaponize it. I get that. Good intentions turn sour over time, you know. And damn, they burnt the whole cookie. Okay, I understand that. But really, I think the actual authorities, the actual enumerated authorities of what somebody could do, make somebody else do for an employee who was either wrongfully terminated or washed out of the whole system with feigned confusion, you know. I think that should be inside the Ethics Commission. And you're right, they really will need a little team of people to help them with that. 'Cause I mean, we don't just... Yeah. Yeah, you do.
Truly stand up for what's right. And
Yeah.
sometimes what's right may not be.
Yeah. Well, sometimes...
Well, that's a first.
Sometimes General Counsel is a popularity contest, too.
Absolutely.
Sometimes there's not that many people in there. Sometimes there is. You never know. It's always throw your hat up and see where it lands at.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's the problem with it.
But I think, honestly, I think this can be split. One half of it could just go straight to Tero for outside people coming in. Something to strengthen our reservation. Help it. Help us. And then the other side is a little closer to home. You know what I mean? I'm sure each one of us has our own little story of things that went up and down and wrong and right and sideways and everything else, you know. But really, I think that's what the Ethics Commission should be doing. Because what's right's right and what's wrong is wrong. And we can't all deal with everything all the time. That's why we have different positions. But, you know, that's just me. It's just how I feel. It's how I think about it. I think this whole thing can be split. I think it's how it should be. And me, I'm always going first and foremost for tribe members, no matter what. Because if I'm not helping lead our people and I'm not trying to help and advocate for all of our members, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So just try to do the best I can and speak my little piece, and appreciate y'all listening to me. General Counsel, somebody would told me shut up already. I already got smacked, though. I already got smacked, you know?
Well, not by the ante.
Oh.
It's different.
No, I'm good on that.
Joey, when you say split, are you talking about a split between tribal members and outsiders who are trying to conduct business with the Quapaw Nation.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Just want to make sure I was clear.
yeah. But the same rules can apply inside of a Tero, inside this act for outside members. But if the business committee, because people for a long time they took all their problems up there, and then there was somebody who always took care of everything, went like that, and it was either nothing or something very severe. That's just how it was. Yeah, and then there was no in between though. You know, there was no in between. There was no actual investigating. There was no actual following up with all the parties. There wasn't no ethics behind it. It was just depending on what type of mood they were in. And so if we're not going to do that, and if our boards don't want to do that, and our HRs, God forbid, I know they haven't always been the best, you know, or sometimes they just miss things. It's just how it is. People miss things. People are human. But if we have another avenue to rely on to help protect our tribal members, because once our tribal members become our employees, they're not just our employees solely. They're still our tribal members, and we're not just a corporation. We're not a corporation. But we are. And I understand once they're employees, they adhere to the handbooks. That still doesn't remove the fact that they're tribal members. That still doesn't remove the fact that I have a responsibility to take up for them. And if our higher level doesn't want to have to get down into those operations and do that and investigate all that, we need a team who will. Because God's honest truth, we got a lot more things we got to worry about. We got bigger things all the time we got to worry about. I know it's going to cost some money. Sure do. I hear you, I know. But here in a couple years, there's a lot of problems going on today, but here in a couple years, we're going to have some big problems. And as soon as we jump, get bigger and bigger and bigger, I really think we're going to need something like this to help it. This is pre-planning. Imagine everything in 10 years. I hope it is. I'm praying, moving the best I can. I hope it is. But anyways, you know, that's just how I feel about it. And I could be wrong too. I could be completely wrong. I very well could be. It could blow up in my face. Story of my life. I'm just going to keep on talking now because my Aunt Jen loves me.
Time. All right. Thank you, Joey, for your strong words. Other questions on either from the Zoom folks or here in the room? Why didn't we do this a few weeks ago? This was a really good discussion. Really good. Yeah. Going once, going twice. All righty. We're done. Thank you. Appreciate y'all being here. Be careful going home. I know I still saw a couple of some patchy ice in a few areas that don't get good sunlight, so please be careful. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Re-